Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So, we are going to be starting with chapter 3 right now in Night. Where we left off, Ellie and his family were on the train and they arrived at Birkenau, which is the sorting place for Auschwitz. And they're getting off the train, and so here we go. The beloved objects that we had carried with us from the place to place were now left behind in the wagon. And with them, finally, our illusions. Every few yards there stood an SS man, his machine gun trained on us. Hand in hand we followed the throng. An SS came toward us wielding a club. He commanded, "Men to the left, women to the right." 8 words spoken quietly, indifferently, without emotion. 8 simple words. Yet that was the moment when I left my mother. There was no time to think, and I already felt my father's hand press against mine. We were alone. In a fraction of a second, I could see my mother, my sisters move to the right. Tispora was holding my mother's hand. I saw them walking farther and farther away. Mother was stroking my sister's blonde hair, as if to protect her. As I walked on with my father, with the men, I didn't know that this was the moment in time and the place where I was leaving my mother and Tispora forever. I kept walking, my father holding my hand. Behind me, an old man fell to the ground. Nearby, an SS man replaced his revolver in its holster. My hand tightened its grip on my father. All I could think of was not to lose him, not to remain alone. The SS officer gave the orders. "Form ranks of fives." There was a tumult. It was imperative to stay together. "Hey, kid, how old are you?" The man interrogating me was an inmate. I could not see his face, but his voice was weary and warm. 15. "No, you're 18." "But I'm not," I said. "I'm 15. "Fool! Listen to what I say!" Then he asked my father, who answered, "I'm 50. "No!" The man now sounded angry. "Not 50, you're 40. Do you hear? 18 and 40. He disappeared into the darkness. Another inmate appeared, unleashing a stream of invectives. "Sons of bitches! Why have you come here? Tell me why!" Someone dared to reply. "What do you think? That we came of our own free will? That we asked to come here?" The other seemed ready to kill him. "Shut up, you moron, or I'll tear you to pieces. You should have hanged yourselves rather than come here. Didn't you know what was in store for you here in Auschwitz? You didn't know in 1944? True, we didn't know. Nobody had told us. He couldn't believe his ears. His tone became even harsher. "Over there! Do you see the chimney over there? Do you see it? And the flames, do you see them?" Yes, we saw the flames. "Over there! That's where they'll take you! Over there will be your grave! You still don't understand, you sons of bitches! Don't you understand anything? You will be burned! Burned to a cinder! Turned into ashes!" His anger changed into fury. We stood stunned, petrified. Could this be just a nightmare? An unimaginable nightmare? I heard whispers around me. "We must do something. We can't let them kill us like that, like cattle in the slaughterhouse. We must revolt." There were among us a few tough men. They actually had knives and were urging us to attack the armed guards. One of them was muttering, "Let the world learn of the existence of Auschwitz. Let everybody find out about it while they still have a chance to escape." But the older men begged their sons not to be foolish. "We mustn't give up hope. Even now as the sword hangs over our heads. So taught our sages." The wind of revolt died down. We continued to walk until we came to a crossroads. Standing in the middle of it was, though I didn't know it then, Dr. Mengele, the notorious Dr. Mengele. He looked like the typical SS officer, a cruel, though not unintelligent face, complete with monocle. He was holding a conductor's baton and was surrounded by officers. The baton was moving constantly, sometimes to the right, sometimes to the left. In no time, I stood before him. Your age? He asked, perhaps trying to sound paternal. 18. My voice was trembling. In good health? Yes. Your profession? Tell him that I was a student. Farmer? I heard myself saying. This conversation lasted no more than a few seconds. It seemed like an eternity. The baton pointed to the left. I took half a step forward. I first wanted to see where they would send my father. Were he to have gone to the right, I would have run after him. The baton once more moved to the left. A weight lifted from my heart. We did not know as yet which was the better side, right or left, which road led to prison and which to the crematoria. Still, I was happy. I was near my father. Our procession continued slowly to move forward. Another inmate came over to us. Satisfied? Yes, someone answered. Poor devils, you are heading for the crematorium. He seemed to be telling the truth. Not far from us, huge flames, were rising from a ditch. Something was being burned there. A truck drew close and unloaded its hull. Small children, babies. Yes, I did see this with my own eyes. Children thrown into the flames. Is it any wonder that ever since then sleep tends to elude me? So that was where we were going. A little farther on, there was another, larger pit for adults. I pinched myself. Was I still alive? Was I awake? How was it possible that men, women, and children were being burned and the world kept silent? No, all this could not be real. A nightmare, perhaps. Soon I would wake up with a start, my heart pounding, and find that I was back in my room of my childhood, with my books. My father's voice tore me from my daydreams. What a shame. Shame that you did not go with your mother. I saw many children your age go with their mothers. His voice was terribly sad. I understood that he did not wish to see what they would do to me. He did not wish to see his only son go up in flames. My forehead was covered with cold sweat. Still, I told him that I could not believe that human beings were being burned in our times. The world would never tolerate such crimes. The world? The world is not interested in us today. Today, everything is possible. Even the crematorium. His voice broke. Father, I said, if that's true, then I don't want to wait. I'll run into the electrified barbed wire. That would be easier than a slow death in the flames. He didn't answer. He was weeping. His body was shaking. Everybody around us was weeping. Someone began to recite Kaddish, the prayer for the dead. I don't know whether, during the history of the Jewish people, men have ever before recited the Kaddish for themselves. May his name be celebrated and sanctified, whispered my father. For the first time, I felt anger rising within me. Why should I sanctify his name? The Almighty, the eternal and terrible master of the universe, chose to be silent. What was there to thank him for? We continued our march. We were coming closer and closer to the pit, from which an infernal heat was rising. 20 more steps. If I was going to kill myself, this was the time. Our column had only some 15 steps to go. I bit my lips so that my father would not hear my teeth chattering. 10 more steps. 8. 7. We were walking slowly, as one follows a hearse, our own funeral procession. Only 4 more steps. 3. There it was now, very close to us, the pit and its flames. I gathered all that remained of my strength in order to break rank and throw myself onto the barbed wire. Deep down, I was saying goodbye to my father, to the whole universe, and against my will I found myself whispering the words, May his name be exalted and sanctified. My heart was about to burst. There, I was face to face with the angel of death. No, 2 steps from the pit, we were ordered to turn left and herded into barracks. I squeezed my father's hand. He said, "Do you remember Mrs. Schachter and the train?" Never shall I forget that night, the first night in camp that turned my life into one long night, 7 times sealed. Never shall I forget the smoke. Never shall I forget the small faces of the children whose bodies I saw transformed into smoke under a silent sky. Never shall I forget those flames that consumed my faith forever. Never shall I forget the nocturnal silence that deprived me for all eternity of the desire to live. Never shall I forget those moments that murdered my God and my soul and turned my dreams to ashes. Never shall I forget those things, even were I condemned to live as long as God himself. Never. The barrack we had been assigned to was very long. On the roof, a few bluish skylights. I thought, this is what the antechamber of hell must look like. So many crazed men, so much shouting, so much brutality. Dozens of inmates were there to receive us, sticks in hand, striking anywhere, anyone, without reason. The orders came, "Strip! Hurry up! Russ! Hold on to your only belt and your shoes!" Our clothes were to be thrown onto the floor at the back of the barracks. There was a pile there already, new suits, old ones, torn overcoats, rags. For us it meant true equality, nakedness. We trembled in the cold. A few SS officers wandered through the room, looking for strong men. If vigor was what was appreciated, perhaps one should try to appear sturdy? My father thought the opposite. Better not to draw attention. We later found out that he had been right. Those who were selected that day were incorporated into the Sonderkommando, commando working in the crematoria. Bela Katz, the son of an important merchant of my town, had arrived in Birkenau with the first transport 1 week ahead of us. When he found out that we were there, he succeeded in slipping us a note. He told us that having been chosen because of his strength, he had been forced to place his own father's body into the furnace. The blows continued to rain on us. To the barber! Belts and shoes in hand, I let myself be dragged along to the barbers. Their clippers tore out our hair, shaved every hair on our bodies. My head was buzzing, the same thought surfacing over and over, not to be separated from my father. Freed from the barber's clutches, we began to wander about the crowd, finding friends, acquaintances. Every encounter filled us with joy. Yes, joy! Thank God you are still alive! Some were crying. They used whatever strength they had left to cry. Why had they let themselves been brought here? Why didn't they die in their beds? Their words were interspersed with sobs. Suddenly, someone threw his arms around me in a hug. Yes, almost done. Sorry. Suddenly, someone threw his arms around me in a hug. Ichil, the Sigter Rebbe's brother. He was weeping bitterly. I thought he was crying with joy at still being alive. Don't cry, Ichil, I said. Don't waste your tears. Not cry? We're on the threshold of death. Soon we shall be inside. Do you understand? Inside. How could I not cry? I watched darkness fade through the bluish skylights on the roof. I no longer was afraid. I was overcome by fatigue. The absent no longer entered our thoughts. One spoke of them. Who knows what happened to them? But their fate was not on our minds. We were incapable of thinking. Our senses were numbed. Everything was fading into a fog. We no longer clung to anything. The instincts of self-preservation, of self-defense, of pride had all deserted us. In one terrifying moment of lucidity, I thought of us as damned souls wandering through the void, souls condemned to wander through space until the end of time, seeking redemption, seeking oblivion, without any hope of finding either. Around 5 o'clock in the morning, we were expelled from the barrack. The capos were beating us again, but I no longer felt the pain. A glacial wind was enveloping us. We were naked, holding our shoes and belts. An order: run! And we ran. After a few minutes of running, a new barrack. A barrel of foul-smelling liquid stood at the door. Disinfection. Everybody soaked in it. Then came a hot shower, all very fast. As we left the showers, we were chased outside and ordered to run some more. Another barrack, the storeroom. Very long tables, mountains of prison garb. As we ran, they threw the clothes at us: pants, jackets, shirts. In a few seconds, we had ceased to be men. Had the situation not been so tragic, we might have laughed. We looked pretty strange. Meyer Katz, a colossus, wore a child's pants, and Stern, a skinny little fellow, was floundering in a huge jacket. We immediately started to switch. I glanced over at my father. How changed he looked. His eyes were veiled. I wanted to tell him something, but I didn't know what. The night had passed completely. The morning star shone in the sky. I too had become a different person. The student of the Talmud, the child I was, had been consumed by the flames. All that was left was a shape that resembled me. My soul had been invaded and devoured by a black flame. So many events had taken place in just a few hours that I had completely lost all notion of time. When had we left our homes? And the ghetto? And the train? Only a week ago? One night? One single night? How long had we been standing in the freezing wind? 1 hour? A single hour? 60 minutes? Surely it was a dream. Heartbreaking. This one breaks my heart, absolutely. He says, I did not know that in that place at that moment I was parting from my mother and my sister forever. Try and find the humanity in this. Try and put yourself in that situation. Saying goodbye to your family, and only to realize later that you never would ever see them again. Gone. Dead. Family ripped apart. Heartbreaking. Dr. Mengele is the very famous doctor of death in World War II, specifically in the concentration camps parts of the war. He had the monocle here. So this is pictures of Josef Mengele. All right. Again, I am struck by this human capacity for joy. We did not know which way was the better side, right or left. We didn't know if life, death both ways. We don't know. But we were together. And in that moment, I was happy, he says. In that moment, he was happy. It's stunning to me how in the lowest of lows and in the most evil of evils, we can still find things to be happy about. So, also the father-son relationship, which you should be paying attention to as we read, that his only hope was to stay with his father in this moment. He kind of looked, he wasn't thinking about self-preservation. He could have gotten himself into a lot of trouble. He could have found himself getting beaten. But he knew that staying with his father was the most important thing for him. He describes how they took the bodies of these children and these babies and dumped them into this fire pits. And he says, it's no wonder that I've had hard time sleeping since then. Now, we know that the author of this book wrote this many, many years after his experiences. So it happened here. Long time later, he writes the book, and he's saying, I've spent my entire adult life unable to sleep because of the horrors that are burned into my mind. And when I close my eyes, I don't sleep. I see nightmares. And he's saying these horrible things stick with you. You can't just easily forget them. Again, human capacity for joy. These meetings filled us with joy. Yes, joy. Thank God you're still alive. How long do you think that they can maintain that? How long can a person find any kind of happiness or joy in such an evil place? I don't know, but that's what he keeps saying. It's pretty remarkable. Um, my version says it was a barrel of petrol was sprayed on them. In this version on the PDF, it says it was disinfectant sprayed on them. But the point is that they just shave all their head, probably because of lice and possible bugs, and then they dump disinfectant on them, probably some sort of like gasoline that would be easy to spray and that would just kill everything. So, um, yeah. All right. Thank you for paying attention. It's a hard story to read. I understand that. There's nothing fun about reading this, but it's important for us to know the evils that took place and to get a sense for what people had to do to survive. All right, that's enough for now. Talk to you later.